I am San Francisco District Attorney Brooke Jenkins, and I am here to announce the charges in connection with the incident that occurred on August 31st, 2024 in Union Square with regard to victim Ricky Pearsall. Before I get into the charges, I just first want to extend my thoughts and prayers with the victim and with his family and his teammates, who I know have been significantly traumatized by what happened. I also know that the San Francisco community has been traumatized. And now it's my job and my office's job to make sure that we have accountability in this case and that we move forward with ensuring that San Francisco has a level of public safety that doesn't contribute to these types of events happening in the future. We have now the following charges against the minor who committed the offense on August 31st. In addition to other charges, we have filed attempted murder, including allegations of personal discharge of a firearm and personal and intentional discharge of that firearm. We have also charged assault with a semi-automatic firearm, as well as an attempted second-degree robbery charge. We expect him to be arraigned tomorrow afternoon at 1:30 p.m. at the Youth Guidance Center here in San Francisco. And again, at this time, because we are dealing with a minor, there is very little that I can share beyond what I have just said with respect to the charges and with respect to how things will move forward. I'm happy to answer any questions.
So he will be charged as an adult then?
At this time, the charges will be filed in the juvenile court. No longer under California law can a district attorney choose to file those charges against a minor in adult court. The only mechanism for that is to request a transfer hearing, which requires that a judge rule on the minor's fitness to be transferred to adult court, which essentially means that the juvenile system would not be equipped to rehabilitate that minor. So going forward, my office will review the case more closely to determine whether or not we will seek that fitness hearing.
How long until you make that decision?
The amount of time that we have to decide whether to seek that petition depends on the speed at which the defendant proceeds with the case. So tomorrow, the defense will be able to make a determination of whether they want to move forward on a speedy trial basis, meaning they can invoke his right to a speedy trial, which entitles him to a trial within 30 days. If they proceed in that fashion, then we will have to make a decision within that 30-day period. If they decide to waive time, essentially waive that right to a 30-day trial, then we will have additional time to have that consideration.
What penalties might a minor in this case be looking at?
Juvenile jurisdiction ends at age 25. So the juvenile system has to essentially lose its jurisdiction over the individual at age 25, meaning they are released back into the public with no supervision after that point. For a should the judge order that, or should that be the resolution? But only in the juvenile system, they will not be transferred over to the county jail. Only if we proceed and are granted the opportunity to move this case to adult court would he be facing adult custody time.
I know we have to go through that process, but do you personally believe he should be tried as an adult?
At this time, this is still a very fresh investigation. We got enough, obviously, to be able to file these charges, but it is premature for me to opine on that right now. We have a lot to review as far as not only this case, but the background of the minor, the facts. Again, SFPD is still gathering information about this crime, and we will make the appropriate time when we have all of it. I cannot discuss anything about whether he does or he.
Can you tell us what this process looks like going forward now that he will be referred for charges in juvenile court? What's the timeline? What's the time frame? When will your office get a chance to weigh in and ask for him to possibly be tried?
So whether or not we pursue a fitness hearing will likely, and the timing of that depends on the speed at which the defense proceeds with the case. So if they invoke his right to trial within 30 days, then we've got to make that decision in the next few weeks. If they decide to waive that right, then that may afford us additional time to do further investigation and further research into other issues in order to make a decision with more information.
In 2022, you had said that all 16 and 17-year-olds involved in crimes that you looked at as heinous would be charged as an adult. Are you still under the impression that those type of individuals would be charged as an adult, and do you look at this as a heinous crime?
So what I indicated in 2022 was that there are 5 crime types for 16 and 17-year-olds for which we would consider potentially seeking to transfer them to adult court. Attempted murder is one of those charges. And so again, it was for consideration. We have to look at the facts, we have to look at the minor's history, we have to look at a number of things in order to make a determination of whether we think it's appropriate to seek transfer. I just, again, don't have all of the information yet to be able to make that determination.
We know he's 17-year-old. We know that he lives in Tracy. If he is adjudicated in the juvenile justice system, is there a possibility that he would actually be sent back to his hometown?
Yes, there is a possibility that the actual outcome of the case, that jurisdiction would be transferred back to his home county.
Have you spoken with
Through a representative for the family what the charges are, and that's the most that I can say. Of course, I will always pay our victims, regardless of their status, the utmost respect that we should be informing them before understanding that there is a large interest amongst people both in San Francisco and outside of San Francisco about this case, and so I did notify them of what was happening.
Believe among your office or the police department that anyone else could have been involved here?
At this time, we don't know that just yet. Again, this is a very fresh investigation. It's only been a few days, and so we are relying upon SFPD to be able to do a thorough analysis of video surveillance evidence and other things to make that determination.
Can you share the nature of any of the testimonies you may have seen throughout the course of this investigation with the 17-year-old? Anything you have shared or said to officers?
No, at this time I'm not going to share any facts other than, of course, what has already been disseminated to the media.
And is there any belief among your officers this could be gang-related?
At this time, again, we just don't have all of the facts just yet. It takes some time to dig deep into these investigations and to look into those things, and so time will tell as that investigation continues.
We have talked the day of about a lot of surveillance cameras down there. Talk about finding something.
I'm sorry, what was the question at the end?
Could you talk about the success of finding surveillance video down there where it happened?
Yes, so the San Francisco police, of course, were downtown looking for every possible camera that could have captured video of this incident. It took place sort of over a number of yards, I should say, and so they are actively collecting that and reviewing it to see what they can put together for a full timeline, but they are actively engaged in that right now. At this time, again, I can't share how that investigation is going.
Question. Just in terms of people, a lot of people speculating here, saying that the reason this happens is people feel like they can come into San Francisco, do what they want, but now you have the person accused of this crime. How important is it to you to show people you can't just come to San Francisco and shoot, not just organized, but anyone?
Of course, I don't walk into cases trying to use them as an example, so I want that to be clear. But it is my job to make sure that people understand that the culture in San Francisco is very different than it was 2.5 years ago. I took over in large part because the city was fed up with the fact that crime was being overly tolerated. And so I have attempted to make it clear that there will be accountability when people commit crimes, most certainly serious crimes of this nature. Regardless of the status of the victim, my job and my office's job is to ensure that we have appropriate consequences, and I do want it to spread far and wide that will be the case when something happens in San Francisco.
You're not naming him?
The law prohibits us from naming him because he is a minor.
Can you repeat the charges one more time?
It is attempted murder with the enhancing allegations of intentional discharge of a firearm and personal use of a firearm, assault with a semi-automatic firearm, and an attempted second-degree robbery.
Do you believe that there are more suspects tied to this particular teen, or would you say he's the sole perpetrator?
At this time, we don't know whether he was a lone actor or acting in concert with others. That is a part of the investigation. As you can imagine, a lot goes into these investigations. It requires a lot of review of video surveillance evidence and other things. And so the police department are actively engaged in that investigation, and we are waiting to see.
Sorry to come before I got here a little bit late. There's a report that 2 days before he shot Ricky Pearsall, he was arrested for a gun violation of Tracy.
So I cannot get into his criminal history, if it exists, because of the fact that he is a minor. So I'm not at liberty to confirm or deny that.
Charges have been officially filed now, is that correct?
Yes, the charges have been filed now.
Okay, thank you all.
Thanks, Brooke.
Thanks.
That was San Francisco District Attorney Brooke Jenkins announcing charges in the shooting of Ricky Pearsall. He will be charged in juvenile court, and he will be making his first appearance tomorrow.